the U.S. is reporting the highest number of COVID cases on consecutive days since January.
I am quite sure there's a few of you out there who at this point may want to see a different side of this narrative we've been living for the past 2 years. Maybe, just maybe, we can share some positive numbers instead of the constant negative fear-mongering. I've got an idea. Why don't we discuss the COVID numbers that you haven't seen? The numbers from the government's websites that they aren't showing you. The numbers that actually show we're doing quite well. In episode 3, we're going to discuss another view, or the positive side, if there is one, of the COVID-19 pandemic.
This morning, COVID-19 surging across the South as cases climb.
Please send help now.
What I'm talking about is not misinformation. What I'm talking about is positive information, gathered and calculated from the government's own data. These are government numbers that they haven't shown you. You see, in the world of negative fear-mongering, there just so happens to be another way to see the story. A narrative that hasn't been shared. A viewpoint that looks quite promising and positive. Our world is actually doing quite well. Who knew? All we have seen in the past 2 years is either A, frighteningly devastating and dangerous news of COVID outbreaks and why this is so bad and why you should be deathly afraid, a constant barrage of gloom and doom, shut everything down, everyone is infected and going to kill you. Or B, the conspiracy theory side of why this is all a scam and you shouldn't believe any of it. We've seen riots in grocery stores. We've had our world's first toilet paper famine. Poof! Overnight. No more toilet paper. We've had vaxxers and anti-vaxxers, maskers and anti-maskers, the shamers crucifying anyone who doesn't comply. Why? Why have we done all of this? By now, we've seen all the media, we've heard all the politics, and like many of you, I'm sure you may be at the beginning stages of, I'm over it. Well, great news, because there's actually some really promising numbers. We now have 2 full years of data, total numbers from January 2020, when this thing started to ramp up, to January 2022. That's excellent news. So where are we at? Now, before we get started with the data, let me be crystal clear. All of this information, all of this data you are about to see is the government's own data. This is not made up, nor is it misinformation, nor is it a conspiracy theory. This is their numbers. As well, I am not making light of the fact that people's loved ones have died. I am very sorry that people have died with COVID. I'm only trying to show a bit of positive out of all of this negative that we've had to live with for the past 2 years. Let's start with an interesting note. When the pandemic began, the government overnight magically gained the ability to track a virus exactly by the number daily. Now, till that date, the prior major virus called the flu was merely guesstimated due to their inability to track it properly. So they extrapolated the numbers from the data that they had. This is per the CDC's explanation on their website. And then, bam! Overnight, they could track exact numbers for COVID. Anyway, per the numbers to date, this is worldwide numbers here. The entire planet. This data was pulled from worldometers.info website, which pulls from different governments' websites as noted on their site to bring all the worldwide data together in one place. Now, after 2 years of data, 335,030,266 people worldwide have tested positive for SARS-CoV-2, which is the virus that causes the disease COVID or COVID-19. Just so we understand, testing positive for the virus does not mean you have the disease, which is COVID. Works the same way with any virus. Now, an article published on December 21st, 2021 by today.com shows that per a recent published study, more than 40% of positive COVID tests worldwide were asymptomatic, meaning no symptoms at all. Interestingly enough, how would these individuals have COVID then, which is the disease caused by the virus? COVID is the disease which, to be diagnosed, must show several symptoms of the disease. But more than 40% have none. 0. So how do they have COVID? Well, technically, they do not have COVID. They merely tested positive for the virus. But, of course, apparently, we don't discern that information for some reason. Anyway, out of the 330-something million people worldwide who've tested positive, 5,572,782 of those individuals have died. Now, no, that's not very positive, and no, I'm not making light of the fact that millions of people have died with COVID. That sucks, and I'm very sorry. So, using their numbers of total current worldwide cases and deaths, the current death rate is 1.66%. That is 5,572,782 divided by 335,030,266. So 1.66% of the people who tested positive for SARS-CoV-2 have died in 2 years, which means 98.34% of the people infected have not died. That's pretty impressive, if you ask me. During a worldwide pandemic, 98.34% of the people that tested positive for the virus have not died. So let's build on that. If the current population of the world is around 7.92 billion people, and only 335 million-ish have tested positive for SARS-CoV-2, then that means only 4% of the planet's total population has actually been affected by the virus in a 2-year span. Yes, that means 96% of the entire planet has not tested positive for the virus. That's 7.6 billion people with no sign of COVID. So, the vast majority of the planet Earth have not been affected at all. In fact, what that means is 0.0007% of the world's population have died with COVID. Let's do that math so we're clear. 5,572,782 total deaths worldwide divided by 7.92 billion total population equals 0.0007%. Yet, the aftermath of the fear-mongering pandemic has nearly destroyed many economies and has destroyed thousands upon thousands of small businesses across the planet. 96% of Earth has not tested positive for SARS-CoV-2. Yet we've scared 7.92 billion people near to death, not from COVID, but from the fear of COVID. Remember, these numbers aren't misinformation. These numbers are positive information, straight from the government's data. This is great news. COVID has not taken over the planet. COVID is not killing the entire planet, like it appears some want us to believe. For comparison reasons, let's look at some other numbers. First, when you divide out the total COVID deaths by the 2-year span that we have data now, there's an average of 7,633 deaths per day worldwide with COVID. That's 5,572,782 divided by 730, which is 365 days per year, times 2. 2 years. Yes, 7,663 is a large amount of people dying daily, worldwide, with COVID. Now, for comparison reasons only, let's look at some non-COVID related deaths worldwide, just to see how COVID compares. On average, how many deaths would you think there were per day from cancer? Over 20,000 a day worldwide from cancer. Well more than double that of COVID. These numbers are from the World Health Organization, the WHO. Next, on average, how many deaths are there per day from smoking? Over 12,000 a day worldwide from smoking. Also, these numbers are from the WHO. How many deaths per day would you think occur from alcohol? Over 6,000 a day worldwide. Quite close to COVID's average from alcohol. also from the WHO. And one last one. How many children under 5 years old die per day worldwide from a range of things, some of which including dirty drinking water and starvation? Children under 5 dying per day worldwide. Over 19,000 under 5 per day worldwide. These numbers are from UNICEF. COVID numbers don't seem so staggering when you look at them from a different view or in a different way. COVID doesn't kill as much as cancer, smoking, or dirty drinking water and starvation. Now, just for a little more clarity, let's look at some U.S. numbers only, being that the U.S. is number 1 in total COVID cases and number 1 in total COVID deaths. Okay, from January 2020 to January 2022, 582 kids between the age of 5 and 18 have died from COVID, and 259 kids from the age of 0 to 4 have died from COVID, per the CDC's exact number. So, again, not making light of the fact that children have died with COVID. Very sorry, very sad. Do not want this to happen at all. I have children. I don't want this to happen. Now, in the 2-year span, 841 kids below the age of 18 have died with COVID. 841. And we have shut down school systems, scared these kids constantly, made them wear masks, stay 6 feet away, and on, constant barrage of fear on these children. Now, here's where it gets real interesting. In comparison with the CDC's own numbers of the flu for the 2 years prior to COVID beginning, that's 2017 to 2018 and 2018 to 2019. Let's just see what it shows for the flu for the same age group. Okay, you'll need to understand a few things first. Again, prior to COVID, the CDC didn't have the ability to track virus numbers daily exactly. So they extrapolated. And with that extrapolation, they added a 95% UI. What is a 95% UI, you might ask? Let's look at the CDC's site for an explanation. It is an uncertainty interval, which basically means they give a range of numbers and then their true point estimate will fall within those numbers. So there's a UI range, and then they give you a true point estimate. Okay, now, I'm not even going to take into account the 95% UI that states the potential of quite a bit higher numbers. We're just going to put a pin in that and use the CDC's true point estimate. So, we're going to take the 2 years prior to COVID estimated flu numbers and compare them to our now 2 years of data with COVID. Exact numbers for kids under 18. From 2017 to 2018, The flu deaths under 17, they use 17 for the flu, were 526. From 2018 to 2019, the flu deaths under 17 were 372. So, in the 2 years prior to COVID, the flu claimed 898 kids under the age of 17. And in the same time frame, 2 years later, with COVID, it claimed 841 kids under the age of 18. Per the CDC numbers, the flu killed more kids than COVID in the 2-year span prior to COVID. Let that sink in for just a minute. No schools closed, no mask, no 6 foot, no national emergency, no end of time dire warnings, nothing, crickets. For the 2 years prior to COVID, when more kids died. So let me get this straight. The flu, on average, has killed more kids than COVID, per the government's numbers on the CDC website. So it appears the flu is more dangerous to our children than COVID. Can anyone tell me why a virus that has killed 0.0007% of the planet's population and has killed fewer children than the flu in the U.S. and fewer children under 5 than dirty drinking water and starvation worldwide? Fewer people than cancer and smoking. Why have we turned the world upside down? Closed borders, closed schools, closed businesses, ruined lives, lost jobs, destroyed businesses, scared people to freaking death, and turned everyone against each other. These positive numbers that we've discussed so far, they don't make any sense. They don't make sense of what we've seen happen by the governments across the world and the media. Makes no sense. Let's quickly look at some last few numbers for the U.S. Total COVID-related deaths in the United States are at 877,239 for the 2-year span. And total population for the U.S., 334,003,597, which makes the total percentage of COVID-related deaths in the U.S. at 0.002%. Not as good as the entire world, but substantially less than 1%. 0.002% of the United States total population has died with COVID. 0.002%. Yes, it is sad that 877,239 people in the U.S. have died with COVID. But once again, let's look at the CDC's own numbers a little bit closer. Over half of those deaths, over half, were individuals over 75 years of age. And to clarify, the current average life expectancy for adults in the U.S. is 77 years old, which means the majority of adults will die of something around 77 years of age in the U.S. And over half of the COVID deaths were people over 75 that statistically were going to die from something. Now, my wife's parents and my parents are all over 75. I don't want them to die, and I'm not saying I want anyone to die, but everyone is going to die of something. And currently, statistically, it will probably be around 77 years old. Let's go just a little bit further. 75% of the total COVID deaths in the U.S. were over 65 years of age. 75% of COVID deaths in the U.S. were over 65 years of age. Hey, I'm getting older too. I don't like it. But the facts are, it is the majority of people over 65 that this is affecting. These people should take precaution, health precautions, absolutely. And for the remaining 25% of Americans that were younger than 65 that have died with COVID in the 2 years, that age group under 65 equates to 84% of the total U.S. population. That's 280,563,021 people under 65. Of that 84%, 211,692 have died from COVID. That's 0.0007% of the U.S. population under 65 have died with COVID. Same as the entire planet's average. Now, also, of that 84% under 65 years of age, there are 73 million kids under 18. And of that 73 million kids, as we discussed earlier, 841 have died with COVID in the 2 years. That is 0.00001% of the U.S. population of kids under 18 have died with COVID. 0.00001%. And don't forget, the flu killed more kids the 2 years prior to 2 years with COVID. Interestingly enough, if you didn't know, the leading cause of death in the U.S. for kids under 18 is unintentional injuries or accidents. On average, 12,000 kids under 18 die per year from accidents. Now, double that to compare it with the COVID number. 24,000 in 2 years. And what that gives you is kids under 18 in the U.S. have a 28.5 times more chance of dying from an accident than they do from COVID. Our kids have a 28.5 times more chance of dying from an accident than COVID. These numbers are straight from the CDC. COVID, SARS-CoV-2, the coronavirus probably isn't going anywhere, nor are any other viruses. It's going to mutate and create variants, just like all other viruses do. I personally just had the metapneumovirus recently. I'd never heard of it. I was tested for COVID and the flu, had neither, but still isolated, and it was quite bad. Would not recommend it. I lost 5 pounds in a week. Didn't like it. We also had an older friend with the same thing. He was in the hospital for a week. It was quite dangerous. And it wasn't even COVID or the flu. Let's think logically here. If you're concerned, take precautions. There is no shame in that at all. Your choice. If you test positive for SARS-CoV-2 and you're sick, please isolate from others to protect against the spread. That's the kind, responsible thing to do. Heck, anytime you're sick, stay away from other people. Doesn't that seem logical? Wear a mask if you want to. Your choice. No shame in that. If you're at risk due to prior health issues or your age, take precautions. That's your choice. Be careful. But, and I mean but, if there is one thing we need to stop doing immediately, that is looking at other people as if they're going to kill you with an invisible virus that, per the government's own numbers, they have a 96% chance of not having even after 2 years of supposed out-of-control spreading across the entire planet. They have turned us against each other because they have created such a fear around this virus that has killed 0.0007% of the entire planet's population. When does this campaign of fear end? Fear is not going to save us. In fact, fear is only going to destroy us. Take this information for what it is. A positive view on COVID from the government's own numbers. I personally intend to move on and live life with the virus and its ever-changing variants, just like every other virus and their ever-changing variants, which is what viruses do, always have. Friends, yes, SARS-CoV-2 is a different version or variant of the coronavirus. But coronaviruses have been around a very long time. In fact, Lysol cans for decades have advised that Lysol can protect against the coronavirus. You just never saw it there because it wasn't being blasted on every news channel and every news source around the planet 24 hours a day, scaring you to death. We're going to wrap up this episode by taking responsibility for our own lives and our own existence. We're going to take responsibility for our own health, mental and physical. We're going to do some work and understand how to better our lives. Do your own research. It's all there. Do not just blindly listen to what you're being told or sold. Remember, work on your damn self, mind and body. Being healthy mentally and physically takes effort from you, not the government or the media. You. Your life is your responsibility only. Now, do something about it. I love you.